Hey guys, welcome back to Content is Profit. Today, we bring you an answer to a question that has been asked not only in our community, but also in our studio multiple times. And I'm checking here on my notes because this was answered in a Q&A session inside of Business Creator Club. So businesscreator.club, if you want to be a part of the founding fathers. And we've been meeting every Thursday answering questions mainly about podcasting and how to monetize around podcasting, but also content frameworks in general on how to gain traction in your business with content. Not only that, but we're adding every single week different resources, and we're bringing experts that have actually achieved incredible success in their business with their content every single week. So we're excited to gonna start this over. And this specific question was around like, how do you build authority with your podcast, especially if you have an interview podcast? And those are one of the most popular. We talked about it in previous episodes, but we go about like, how do we actually invite people of influence into your podcast? You know, an influence can mean many things, but in this specific case, people of influence for your audience, but also for you as your business. How that person that you're targeting to bring into your platform, that you're inviting into your platform, can also become an opportunity of partnership, of a great partner in the future, of a referral source, maybe a customer, right? And how to do it ethically. So we go over a couple frameworks then, and we also go about specifically on the AIDA framework, like how to actually apply it when it comes to this. So Fonzi goes on and he explains it to Sirya, who's the one that's actively going to invite these people in the platform. And it's something that we've used over the 600 plus episodes that we've done. And I think over the 600 people that we've invited, only one person said no. And it was not actually that person. It was somebody else that was like kind of like a person that worked under them. And then we ended up getting that person through this method. So super exciting. And I'm sure it's going to be super useful. So enjoy.
Let's go back to the question, right, that Sirya had, which was pretty much how do you do the outreach, right, to get people.
Yeah, here, I'll read the question, right? So, hey, Fonzi, do we have any podcast outreach examples we can refer? Also, I would love to know the process to conduct the interview, like the framework on how we can build authority, position ourselves as an expert, even during the interview. I appreciate your help.
Yeah, so we can talk about that. We can talk about the second part of the question today, right? And
yeah,
what I would like, I might have a little tangents here and there, but first thing we gotta, before obviously focusing on that part of how do we build trust in the conversation, we gotta get people booked, right? We gotta get a conversation going on. So for us, it has always been, and this has been, I believe like copywriting has the best principles, honestly, for just for marketing, for content creation too in general. If you study copywriting, you can translate that into your videos at the end of the day, you know, scripting, if you script your videos, outlines, etc. Right? And even your outreach, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to sell somebody your podcast. You're trying to sell them coming on to your podcast. So for me, one of the main principles is WIIFT, right? Which is what's in it for them. And just think of everything from that perspective. What's in it for them? Literally, when I have a conversation about it, what's in it for them, right? I think a lot of people just approach everything from the point of view of what's in it for me, which, you know, then it starts, that's when it sounds a little salesy, or just, you know, just it doesn't give that good feeling to the person on the other side. But if you start with like, hey, look, this is what you can get from this, they might show more interest. And then AIDA is just pretty much like a small copywriting framework where you can, you know, write stuff. There's a bunch of those that you can get out there. I'll say AIDA is one of the most popular ones out there, which stands for, it's an acronym that stands for attention, interest, desire, and action, right? So it's, how can I hit all those? I try to hit all those, literally one of those per line, not a big paragraph, something short that is going to get that person interested. Now, the delivery method, the medium, is going to be depending on, you know, I like to approach them through a medium that they're not too busy in. So if they're, super busy on Instagram and they have a huge account, they get a bunch of comments and stuff like that, they're probably getting a bunch of DMs. Yours might get lost if I try to find them on a different platform, right? Maybe their LinkedIn is not as popular. I'll reach out. I'll probably reach out on the other platforms as well, but I'll put them in focus on that one that is a little bit slower, but I still see that they're active. That's probably where I will do my outreach. But long story short, start with that principle of what's in it for them. AIDA is the framework that I write my message with. So let's say I'm trying to get Ina right here on her show, right? First, I would just go, I would define what's in it for her if she comes to her show. So the main thing would be, hey, look, you have a new audience you can tap into. Maybe if I know she's running some sort of campaign, if she is trying to promote, one of her products or, a lead magnet, I can just be like, you know what, you can come and promote this. We're going to talk specifically about this thing that you're solving, this problem that you're solving on our podcast. And, hopefully we can lead some traffic back to you. So that is my what's in it for them. Then I go, okay, how do I craft my message? So the attention piece, I usually keep it short, is like, Ina, I want you to come to our podcast, right? That right there is, she's going to be like, okay, a podcast, interesting. Probably I get 20,000 pitches a day about coming into people's podcasts, but it's a distribution channel for her message. So she might be interested, right? Hey, Ina, we would love to invite you to our podcast. Then I go into the interest part. How do I create interest? Right now, we're in the position where we are part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. So that's a big lever that we use every single time. We're like, hey, we're part of the HubSpot Podcast Network with podcasts like My First Million, right? Other big podcasts are in there. John Lee Dumas used to be in it. I think he's not in it anymore. But we would put, Entrepreneurs on Fire with John Lee Dumas and so many more. Just that one quick paragraph, people are like, wow. So they're in a network that is fairly big with a big audience. I'm interested now, right? Then how do I create the desire? How do I make them want now to be in the podcast? And then we might share with them. I don't know what line I wrote here on the message, right? But for Ina, it would be, hey, I know you're doing this campaign about X, Y, and Z, about converting customers with small audiences. And that's exactly what our audience is looking for, right? We have, 80% of our audience are small business owners. And I think your message will resonate with them. That'll be probably my desire part. I'm crafting her message specifically for her. And then the action would be, if you're open to being on the podcast, let me know. We have these days available. That part I will change depending on who I'm talking to. If it's somebody that I know is super busy and they're just going to make a decision right there, I will put the dates. This is option A, B. Which one is better for you? If it's somebody that I potentially want to go a little bit back and forth and build a little bit more rapport, somebody that is more on, or level of influence, if you want to put it that way, based on what we talk about, the ladder of influence, then I will try to get them on a call so I can also know them, build more rapport, and then we can book them in there, right? So that part, it changes a little bit. Now, that's pretty much it. And then I'll just like, thanks, Fonzi, right? The action I always put are if you're open to, right? And this is something I learned from, I forgot the guy of the name, so I got to look him up to give him proper credit. But he's this English guy. He talks about sales a lot. And he has a book called Exactly What to Say.
Phil Jones?
Yes, Phil Jones. Totally recommend that book. If it's amazing. The guy is incredible. He's not like, super sales. I personally don't like that, like super salesy, culture, Grant Cardone style, if you want to put it that way. Obviously I know it works and stuff like that, but it's just not my personality. But this guy, that book, Exactly What to Say, is absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I took out that I use literally at all, I use it in my personal life every time as well, is rather than to say, do you want to come to if you want to come to our podcast, let's book a date. Because if you want makes people, I get it. it's easier to say no to if you want, because you cannot want to. But if you say, if you're open to, right? Most people consider themselves open-minded, right? So sure, of course, there's a chance they will say no, but every time you say if you're open to, people, again, everybody considers themselves to be pretty open-minded, and they will probably be more willing to say yes, because subconsciously they're going to be like, of course I'm an open person, right? And they will probably agree more to it, or at least give you an opportunity to chat back and forth. So I always use that. I always use the if you're open to. So that's pretty much the basic of the, again, keeping what's in it for them always in mind. I keep that in mind for everything, literally. When I'm going to write something, when we're on the podcast, it's like my foundation pretty much for everything, what's in it for them. And then the AIDA is just a framework for the messages to have a little bit of structure, try to make it as punctual as possible, make it short, right? So, I mean, I don't want them to, if I open a message and I see a bunch of paragraphs in there, I'm like, I'm not going to read this, especially if the first time you're doing some outreach for them. For some people, we do it on video, the message, right? It might be easier to catch their attention. When we got Todd Brown, I printed one of his books as a PDF, and I had notes all over it. I had post-its all over it, and I literally sent him a message or the video like, Todd, I love your book. It's like the thing is all written over with notes. And I use the same framework, right? The interest is there. I was like, we have a podcast. We love, at that time, we weren't on the HubSpot Podcast Network. So for me, it was more like, hey, we have a podcast where we have people like Steve Larson. So I leverage our previous guest into drawing attention for him. And then the interest part was like, I would love to talk about this book and help it promote it. It's so good. Of course, he wanted to do that. And then the action was like, if you're open to it, let's book for this time. For him, didn't try to jump on a pre-call with him, because obviously he's super busy. So I just straight up give him a time. He said yes, and then we jump on the podcast with him. So it's a pretty good example of what medium to use, whether video, all that stuff. If he wouldn't have answered there, I probably would have go somewhere else and send him a video as well, or send him a message, find his email, send him an email. It's not the ideal way if you want a lot of volume. But, one of our previous clients, his name is Ryan Boger, he talked a lot about AI, but his AI was attention and intention. It's not about, the artificial intelligence, about attention and intention. And sure, you can leverage AI for a lot of stuff. I think it's great for a lot of tasks. But, you can definitely feel the message when it's created with attention and intention rather than AI. We get pitches all the time on our email of like, oh, I love this episode of your podcast that you publish, and they put the exact same title that we put on the episode, and we always respond, oh yeah, what was your favorite part? Crickets, silence. We never hear back from them, and I'm like, that's just not genuine, like, if I haven't listened to your podcast, I'm not gonna tell you that I listened to your podcast.
Yeah,
right.
Lately we've been also counter pitching, so we're like, hey, if you wanna that's great that you love it, which I don't believe you 100%. But here's some options. Like, we're a referral only podcast, so it has to come from a guest. If you don't do that, then you can sign up to Podmatch. Here's the link. And on Podmatch is this platform where people can interact, and then our team can get back to you. But we also have a paid option, which 90% goes to marketing the podcast. And we start at $500, and right now we're pitching $1,500. To be completely honest, nobody has bought, but the messages have stopped. So we're like, awesome, worst case scenario, because at the end of the day, those are also, there might be one or two that there might be interesting people, but also we want to have the control of like who's coming to our show. We're not a show that's open to everybody. And
at first we would look, because they send you like a one pager. So we would like look through the one pager, look at the person, is this person of interest? Like, is it aligned with the podcast? Like, maybe at first when we needed to build a little bit more, I guess like leverage into the podcast, more proof of concept into the podcast as well. We were looking a little bit more into those. So some of those we were like, oh, he's actually a good fit for the show. We will also want to have a conversation with them after the show to see if there's some sort of opportunities in there. So we would do that. But
Yeah.
Now that the show has grown, we're trying to protect also the quality of the show by who we bring on it. So that's why we started doing that now.
Yeah. And also to be at the end of the day, like, to be completely honest, like, that's not our motto. Our motto is not to charge per episode, right? So there's a great person in one of our other communities, Vini. So he used to work for MTV, big networks, and he's all about like status and making sure that your image and like the perception of others compared to like what you're doing is worth it, right? So I remember he got pitched like to be part of like a PR network, and people could pay to have a conversation with you and learn from you type deal. And I think all the pricing there for him, for that everybody, he's like, he was like an average of $150 an hour. And he's like, look, I want to be in this platform as a way to like leverage. It could be marketing, it could be things, but I personally don't have the bandwidth. Like if I put that price and I get like 5 calls booked, I don't want to have 5 calls booked a week at that price point. So he basically put in $5,000 to have a conversation with him. And most people obviously will say no to that. But then he said like one person bought it at $5,000. And then he was like really, really excited to have a conversation with them. And it turned out to be an incredible investment. And then he rolled it into a program that he has with that person. So I'm like, okay, what are some things that can differentiate yourself as not only as an entrepreneur, but also as a show, right? And there's, I've been rereading $100 million offers from Alex Hormozi. And I'm in this part of, there's, I think it comes from Dan Kennedy, as in like your competitive advantage comes from being the most expensive in the room type deal because of perception. So people associate the price with quality as well. At the end of the day, also, if we're offering a service or if we're offering a podcast experience, for example, it has to be top notch to be able to do that, right? Like we have to believe ourselves. Like if people end up doing that. And he's talking about like when he was in the gym, everybody was charging, $100 or so for memberships. And it's like, okay, how can I differentiate myself? And one of those methods is through the pricing. And he's like, I don't want to compete on a race to the bottom. My price is up here because we pack a ton of value and it's delivered and we offer the results. And that's why he followed Dan Kennedy on that advice. It's like, okay, how can we start shifting, our positioning, not only for our show, but also for our social media. And whenever you're ready, I would love to hear your experience, right? Because you had a really cool story, not only with your show, but when you traveled doing the shows remotely. And that was so exciting. And then the opportunities that came from that right now. And I think you might be in one of those big jobs at the moment or opportunities. So you can give us an update whenever you can. Yeah, no, you're good. While you do that, on the open-minded part of the book, I'll just read it real quick. This is a direct quote from Exactly What to Say. Phil Jones, we're not affiliates or anything, but this little booklet has helped us big time.
Yeah, the other book is awesome.
Yeah. So if you were to ask a room of 1,000 people whether they consider themselves open-minded, I am sure over 900 of them will raise their hands. Just about everybody in the land thinks of themselves as meeting this criteria. It is pretty easy to understand why. When introducing a new idea, start with how open-minded are you? This will naturally attract people towards the very thing that you'd like them to support. Everybody wants to be open-minded. And I would challenge everybody here to try that phrase. And the second we started doing it, we started getting like responses back, which was incredible, right? And that's what we wanted, right? We wanted the traction for the conversation. So here are a few examples of the words in practice. How open-minded will you be about trying this as an alternative? So obviously, like this is very sales related. So whether we're selling people into being in our show or into our programs or into the things that we're doing, like, will you be open-minded about giving this interview a chance? Are you open-minded about giving this program a chance, right? How open-minded are you about increasing your monthly income? This is a great one because everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm very open-minded. Tell me more, right? Will you be open-minded about seeing if we could work together? that for me, that was the one that we added at the end of our interviews. It's like, hey, would you be open-minded to collaborate with us? And people are like, yeah. And then that's where we transitioned to the thing. So we mixed a couple, then we were like, hey, I don't know if this is for you, but we do X, will you be open-minded to collaborate with us?
Quick parenthesis here. Sorry for interrupting you. I don't know if this is for you is exactly from that book as well. Because when you say, hey, I don't know if this is for you, subconsciously people say, but what if it is? Their ego is like, what if it is? You know what? Actually, I can make it work. So when you're like, hey, I don't know if this is for you, but this is what we do, right? People are like, oh, interesting, and like they naturally get drawn into that. So yeah, we use that combo. I don't know if this is for you, and are you open-minded?
So from the I'm not sure this is for you, which is, by the way, number one in here, is like one of the most common reasons I hear from people as to why they fail to introduce their idea, product, or service is the fact that they are fearful of rejection they might receive, right? Which is, we've been talking about this in the last couple of sessions. We're like, oh man, like what if like this person says no, or different things. So I'm not sure if this podcast is for you, but actually like insert here, right? But I would love to have you. I think like your message is impactful, and I think your story is incredible because of item one that I saw on social media, because of your book, because of your workshop that I took, because of we work together. And I think like you will be very, you can bring a lot of value to our audience, and as, Fonzi explained the framework of what's in it for them and AIDA, you can start inserting like these little tactics in there. So awesome. I recommend it.
Yeah, we're going to have to call Phil and be like, hey, dude, the link for your book.
I don't know if this is for you, but Phil, do you want to come to the show? Yeah, it's good. All right.
Yeah, fun fact. We actually we learned about Phil because of our very first client ever was like one of his like first 3 interviews that we edited. And I was doing like the edits at that time, and I was listening to him, and I was like, damn, this guy is so good. And like, he just has such a good like demeanor about himself. So I went straight up and like grabbed his book. This was like, I don't know, over 5 years ago. And I honestly, I don't know why we haven't like reached out to try to get him on the podcast. Cause like we use his stuff all the time. So
we do use his stuff all the time.
Might be time to send an invite.
There we go. That's our homework this week, Fonzi. This is your welcome back to the show part.
Yeah. Fun. By the way, the book is really helpful. I just bought it, so I'm going to start reading it.
It's short. Honestly, you can read that in a single day. And
I just bought the book as well as the audiobook, so I'll kind of read faster.
Mm-hmm. I put that on the car, and I just listened to it, and I was like, oh, like every time I listen to it, like one of those resonates more at the time, and I was like, "Ooh, let me use this one." Let me grab that one, and you put it like under your belt. It's a good tool.
I really like the way of transitioning into a backend call from the interview, which said something like, I believe it said something like, "Hey, I'm not sure if this is for you, but," and go into that, or I'm not so sure what we do. I'm not so sure if you are aware of what we do. We collaborate so and so and so.
Mm-hmm.
Are you? Would you be opposed to giving it a thought or something like that? I'll just read the book and I'll come up with a phrase. Yeah, book call.
It's important to definitely build rapport during the interview.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Before asking those questions, but it's also a way like. Yeah, it might not be for them, but now they're also aware of what you do. And you can go after you show them, you can be like, well, cool. Like if it's not for you, if it's not a fit, like it's not a product fit for your problems right now, like, do you know anybody in your network? Or would you be open to then collaborate? Can we do something together where I can, tap into your network and stuff? It really opens a lot of opportunities.
These also unlocked for us, direct outreach on social media when we were building the group, because, hey, will you be like, we will connect with them and be like, hey, Sirya, I just saw that you publish content daily. Will you be open to be part of a community of creators type deal? And it it was awesome because it opened a ton of communication with them. So it went from like 100 to 300 in like a month, which was awesome, dude. So
Nice.
when we were doing the work of that outreach, yeah.